My name is Rocco Sacramone. Recently opened L'Incontro by Rocco here on the Upper East Side. And I have the pleasure of welcoming Bobby Ochs here.
Thank you.
Legendary restaurateur, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, welcome to L'Incontro by Rocco here.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you. And
It's a pleasure being here. It's a pleasure. You have a great reputation. I've been doing this, or I have been doing this for quite some time. But I owned restaurants on 78th Street and First Avenue.
Okay.
I owned restaurants on 3rd Avenue between 62nd and 63rd. I owned restaurants on Madison Avenue between 63rd and 64th. I owned restaurants across the street from Lincoln Center. I owned restaurants around the corner from Mulholland Drive, which was on 3rd Avenue on 63rd Street. You want me to keep going?
you owned enough restaurants already.
I have plenty. I could go on. I could kill an hour
Well,
just
so-
naming my
So
restaurants.
obviously you probably saw lots of changes going on since you've been, especially up here in the from the 80s,
Absolutely.
right? I'm assuming there's.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna go. I've been in Astoria. I was in Astoria for 25 years in Trattoria L'Incontro. So we also saw lots of changes in 25 years, right? So I'm assuming that you probably are the Upper East Side mayor, sort of, since you owned all these restaurants here.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you went through a lot of changes that you saw in the neighborhood.
Absolutely. I have to say that my first introduction to a restaurant was back in 1960, and that was in the Bronx.
Jesus, I was too.
You were too. Okay. Through the years, I saw quite a bit of changes. In the early days of my career, there was no celebrity chefs.
Right.
If a guy could cook a hamburger, you needed a cook, he was hired.
That's the man.
Yeah. So I opened up in 1978. I opened up a restaurant and I named it after my daughter. It's called Samantha. It was on First Avenue and 78th Street. And I hired a chef and a sous chef. And back in those days, like I said, there was no celebrity chefs. And opening night, he and the sous chef did not show up.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. So I had to find a chef, which I did. And he was a Chinese gentleman that was working as a cook in New Jersey. And I hired him because I was desperate to have someone cook.
Right.
I had the menu and I was desperate. And he turned out to be one of the best
There you go.
chefs by accident.
Right.
By accident. So, and by the way, I saw your menu and I saw what would be fair prices today for the type of food that you're
Right.
putting out. If I tell you I had a brunch that you had a choice of 3 drinks, a Bloody Mary, a screwdriver, a mimosa, a fresh fruit cup, eggs any style that included eggs Benedict, eggs Florentine, coffee or tea for $3.95.
Wow. Wow.
Could you believe that?
You couldn't even buy a cup of tea today.
No. So
Well,
the
obviously,
changes have been
right. So
amazing.
the times have changed. I've been in the restaurant industry for quite a few years now. I mean, I was literally born in the industry. My family came here in 1970 from Italy, and we lived in Astoria all our lives. And in 1973, I got my first job working as a dishwasher, part-timer, in a small restaurant called Rizzo's, which is no longer in existence. And that's where I got my first experience working there. And I fell in love with the industry from that time on. I mean, I got my education. I went to school. I never went to culinary school. I just did a course. I did a little course in Italy, working also with a tremendous chef. He's still there. But we saw lots and lots of changes from when I started until now. Now I'm on the Upper East Side here. So far, I'm loving it.
Good.
The good change. This was a great change, actually. It's a smaller place. My place over there said about 200 to 250 people I could sit in Incontro. And so COVID changed the industry, and Rocco changed the industry on his end. In other words.
Well, you built a beautiful
So
place
yeah,
here.
so this place has been here a couple of months, fairly new. Challenging at the beginning, right after COVID, was getting help was terrible. Also, doing business went to, and you had to reinvent yourself in doing business. The meat, the fish, the oils, you name it, everything went up to 30, 40, 50, 70%. And some of the stuff tripled. So now we're at a base, but we're still, our food cost is still at 27, 28, 29, and sometimes it's 30%. That's the cost of doing business today.
My restaurants, my food cost was generally ran between 30 and 32% back in the day.
Right.
But I always wanted to have a menu that was affordable. I did volume.
Right.
Although when I say I did volume, I had big places.
Right.
Mulholland Drive Cafe sat 170 people with a bar that was 35 feet long, and it was full lunch and dinner.
Right.
I mean, if I tell you we did 500 dinners a night,
Those are numbers.
those were numbers.
Yeah.
So I tried to keep my prices down, and I had a menu where you can get a hamburger for $6.95 with French fries,
Right.
Or a prime sirloin steak for $18.95. But then again, that was back in the 80s.
Well,
and
but
90s.
that's a good, also a good chemistry of doing business, because now the gentleman or the young woman or young lady that will sit at the bar and having that burger,
Yeah.
there were a couple of martinis, couple of
Absolutely.
beers, so that will bring your food cost,
Absolutely.
because
The
otherwise
over-
your food cost would have never worked with those prices.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how much you would pay for the meat at that time, but,
No, but-
I'm sure it would not work at that time.
Absolutely.
So I had a dilemma in Astoria. We did not have a liquor license. We only had beer and wine. And there you really, really got to work
Yeah.
your food cost there.
Yes.
Because the alcohol
I would.
balances it off.
I never would never have opened a restaurant without a full liquor
Yeah, you
license.
need a full liquor license. To,
You need
to
a
operate,
full-
you need that.
You need a full liquor
In fact, right
license.
now here we're waiting for the full liquor license. I only have beer and wine right now
I
as we
noticed,
speak.
yeah, yeah.
But that's coming in the next couple of weeks. We should all be good. So, but liquor is a major force.
Absolutely.
It's a major force in the industry.
Absolutely. If I tell you, and again, I go back in Mulholland Drive Cafe, if I remember right, and this is like the late 80s and the 90s, a martini, if I'm not mistaken, I think I charged $5.50.
Mamma mia.
And I'm talking about a 4.5 ounce glass.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have to say this, I knew I had to raise the prices, and I agonized for weeks to raise the price of my drink from $5.50 to $5.75.
Right.
25 cents. I was
It made a difference.
but I agonized. I
Right.
didn't want to lose.
You don't wanna lose it,
the
right.
customer. But those days,
Well, yeah. Today, the cost of doing business is completely,
Oh,
it's out of whack.
in
It's
the
out of whack.
restaurant that I had on First Avenue and 78th Street, I paid rent $1,350 a month.
Okay.
First Avenue and 78th Street. And it's a restaurant or a pub or bar, whatever you want to call it, called Plug Uglies.
Right.
They must be paying $30,000 a month rent.
I'm going to give you an example of utility. A utility. The
Yeah.
word utility
Yeah.
should be a utility that we should not be paying a lot of money for a utility.
Right.
Okay. My Con Edison bill in Astoria was between 10 to 15,000 a month.
Okay.
Okay. It averages because in the summertime with the ACs and all.
Sure.
Okay. That I get it. My space was 5,000 square feet. Okay, it was like 3 times the size of this place here now. But a utility should not be that kind of money. Okay. My rent was almost as much as Con Edison.
Oh,
So this is the part of business that things really don't make sense anymore. You know. So Bobby, I heard you have not a gift to me. I want to pay for it, but I heard that you wrote an amazing book about the restaurant and all the places that you owned. You want to share with us?
Absolutely. It's actually my memoir, and it's called Bobby Ochs, Kid from the Bronx and Restaurant Partner to the Stars. From kasha vanishkas to caviar to humble pie. Okay, so in my experiences in restaurant business, which started back in the 1960s, and in this book, I talk about and I write about me growing up as a young man in the Bronx during the 1950s. And I was pretty much on my own as a young man. And I was a gambler, hustler, a pool room hustler, and
I challenge you whenever you want to play an 8-ball.
you got a game. I mean, I can't see anymore. I just got to put my glasses on. But anyway, so I spent a childhood growing up hanging out in a pool room called College Rec Pool Hall. In the Bronx on 170th Street with characters. I was 13 years old when I went in there, and the characters that hung out there were like out of a Damon Runyon book. There was Mersh the Senator, Jaime the Turk, Sonny the Genius, Irv the Tooth. These are all real people. And this is how I got my education. Even though Taft High School was across the street, I preferred to be in the pool room.
Right.
And so it led me to some troubles, and it's all in the book. I ended up enlisting in the Army when I was 17 years old, and that was, at that time, there was a draft. So if you were 18 years old to 25, you were eligible to be drafted into the Army, and that would be a 2-year period of active duty. There was an option. You could join the reserves and spend 6 months of active duties and 6 years on a reserve outfit, which would be a meeting once a month.
Right.
So a lot of young men did that. I did it and did my 6-month service, but as soon after I got out of my active duty, President Kennedy at that time was in a conflict with Khrushchev from Russia, and they had a standoff in Berlin. It was the Berlin crisis, and Kennedy called up the reserves, and I was called up. And nobody knew when they were getting out, and nobody knew if we were going into war. So to make this story longer, I actually wrote a show in the Army with some of the New York guys that I was in the Army with, and it was called The Second Time Around. And we toured all the Army bases for 1 year, and the New York Times gave us a great write-up in the Sunday Magazine section. So that was an aspect of my life that was led me on to wanting to find a career for myself when I got out. So my brother owned a restaurant in the Stadium Motor Lodge, which was on the Major Deegan, and it was one exit from Yankee Stadium. And I went to work in the Stadium Motor Lodge, and I went to work as a bartender. And I was trained by a professional man by the name of Conrad Greaves, and he was from Barbados, and he worked at a 5-star hotel. So he trained me as if I should produce like a 5-star.
Have you worked as a bartender?
I worked as a bartender. I worked many aspects in the restaurant business. So anyway, I have this book, and I went on to open restaurants with a lot of celebrities. I actually had 2 restaurants with Patrick Swayze. There's a photo of me and Patrick, a young me. We owned Mulholland Drive Cafe, and that was on 3rd Avenue between 62nd and 63rd. We also owned a restaurant called Bobby O's, get it? On 3rd Avenue and 37th Street. This is a picture of me and Britney Spears. We owned a restaurant club called Nyla on 41st Street in the Dillon Hotel. This is a picture of me and Marla Maples. Marla Maples was going through her divorce from Donald at the time, and we opened a restaurant called Peaches. And this is a picture of me and Ashford and Simpson. We opened a restaurant on 20th Street, 2020. And in fact, David Rockwell, who's a very well-known architect, I gave him the job to do this $1.5 million project.
What year was this?
1985. He had a
money.
partner, Jay Havison, and the only jobs that they did was a couple of kitchens in a house in Westchester. So I gave him this job. Needless to say, I put them on the map. He did, when I opened Mulholland Drive Cafe, which was a French restaurant that was failing, Le Cour Saint-Germain, and I bought the restaurant from a young man, Claude Tuel, which is a story in itself, and I had it renovated, and David Rockwell and Jay Havison did the job for free, because
Wow. I know
So-
you've been you have a lot of partners here that I see you show me. How was it being partners with stars? And I mean, these guys, obviously Swayze was a big star at that time.
When I found the location on First Avenue and 78th Street in 1978, it was located about a block from Catch a Rising Star. Catch a Rising Star was a restaurant bar. It was more like a nightclub where young performers would do their acts for free. People like Rodney Dangerfield,
Right, at that time,
Robin Williams. So they would perform there, and they would come in to eat at Samantha Restaurant, the
Okay.
restaurant that I owned. So I got familiar with a lot of young performers. But the real essence of how I got to be a partner with Patrick Swayze, there was an old girlfriend of mine, Lois Zeta, who was a struggling actress, and I met her back in the early 1960s. We remained friends for many years. She discovered John Travolta.
Oh.
She
Did you go
found
partners with him too? Did you have a partnership with him?
John Travolta wanted to play my part in a movie that we were trying to develop. It was called The Bronx Bastard. It was a movie based on my early part of my life before I got into with all of the celebrities. But yeah, so John, we never got the movie made, but he was very interested in doing that. But Lois Zeta, along with having John Travolta as a client, had Patrick Swayze as a client.
Okay.
So after Dirty Dancing opened up and was a big smash, I found the site on 3rd Avenue between 62nd and 63rd, and I pitched the idea to Patrick Swayze to be a partner. Originally, I was going to call the restaurant The Outsiders, which was a movie with Patrick Swayze in it, Rob Lowe, Emilio Estevez. There was all those young stars that became
Right.
big stars, and after I pitched each one of them, after after Patrick agreed to be in it, in a part of the restaurant, none of the managers of these other actors wanted to be a part of it. But Patrick, being a stand-up guy that he was, said he's in. And we couldn't name it The Outsiders, so we named it Mulholland Drive Cafe.
Okay.
So that was the start of, these celebrity restaurants that I owned, and it was so successful that we opened up Bobby-O's on 3rd Avenue and 37th Street, where Patrick was a partner there. And from there, I went on I have to back it up. I owned a club with Ashford and Simpson on 20th Street, and they used to come into Samantha Restaurant, as as a for dinner.
Right.
And their
Before
daughter,
the party.
yeah, and their daughter and my daughter went to school together, and so we socialized and we were pretty friendly, and we came up with the idea that we were going to open this club 2020, and that was 1985, which we did. Then I opened up Mulholland Drive Cafe, and then I guess I found Marla Maples, or she found me basically, because she used to come in to Mulholland Drive all the time. So one thing led to another.
Okay.
Once I had the reputation of being a good restaurateur and knowing a lot of people.
Right.
Back in those days, we didn't have Instagram. So
Social media.
If you got your name into Page 6 or
was a big
Cindy
deal.
Adams wrote about you, that was the way we publicized the restaurant, or word of mouth. So, yeah. But those days are behind us.
Yeah. Another thing, how is it though? Would they bring their friends and would they fill up your restaurant? Would the other celebrities?
It was known that Patrick Swayze was my partner in Mulholland Drive Cafe. It was publicized every day.
Right.
Just
So
daily.
people would just come in
and celebrities would come in
to see.
And right. It's exactly right.
Of course, that was the.
I remember one night having dinner with Patrick, and we were sitting in the front table where the window was exposed to Third Avenue. My back was to the window, and Patrick was facing me, facing
outside.
Third. And I could see Patrick was going down in his chair slowly, and I didn't know what was going on. I turned around, and the street was full of people just looking in the window.
Well, at that time, it was even a little bit more than it is now, too.
Yeah.
To see a celebrity, it was a big deal.
And so every time he finished a movie, we would do the wrap party in the restaurant. Ghost. We did. I sat next to Demi Moore. I sat next to Demi Moore, and there was everybody who was in the Ghost. And the directors and the producers, we just lined the big table up in the middle of the dining room, and Demi Moore was sitting next to me, and Ruma was about 2 years old at the time, her daughter, and we got a bowl of pasta, spaghetti with some tomato sauce for Ruma,
Right.
and she took it in her hand and threw it in Demi Moore's face, and this sexy movie star with tomato sauce and spaghetti hanging down her face, and Ruma jumped off her lap and started running through the dining room with Demi and Chase. So, these stories, hit the papers and hit the, so.
If that was now, you would have got 2 million hits on Instagram.
Yeah, right. You're exactly right. Yeah.
But you know what? Social media is a great thing for business.
Oh, yeah.
A great exposure, should we say? Like you said, at that time we had to wait for Page 6 to come in. But what are the chances that Page 6 will pick up Rocco Sacramone or Bobby O? For example.
Right.
It's got to be something spectacular in order to pick you up, and especially if you're in the other boroughs. Forget it. Page 6 will never pick you up most of the times,
You're right.
So, but now the power of the media is not only it's social media is the power of everything today. Yeah. It was a pleasure meeting you, number one, and number two, I loved your stories. I can relate to a lot of them because I'm 65 years old also, so I go way back in the industry, and I can relate exactly to what you were saying, except for the part in the 1950s. That I don't remember. That part I do not remember, but I want this.
You got it.
And I want you to sign it.
Rocco, it's been a pleasure.
My pleasure.
You're a gentleman, besides being a great chef, and I'd be happy to sign this book from one restaurateur to another.
I love it. Thank you.
Okay. Rocco, thank you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And guys, if you want some old funny stories on this book, this is where to go. So make sure you pick up a copy.
On Amazon, online on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Barnes & Noble on 3rd Avenue and 87th Street on the Upper East Side.
There we go.
Here we go.
Thanks, Bobby, for coming by. This is Rocco Sacramone from L'Incontro by Rocco. Thank you very much, and hopefully I will see everybody soon.